Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, and on Android. Recommend Spotify. Also, check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel for all your South Florida sports content, including daily Dolphins reports. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Link right here in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge. You can cancel the $2.99 at any time. You get access to 10 different channels, plus our stage shows. Adele's been going regularly there. We're going to be joining him there soon. Also, on there, you get the host updates and more. The place for the most heat, information, and conversation, it's Off the Floor. Also, Prize Picks, use the code 5. It's baseball season. You can play that. You can play WNBA and more. We're getting ready for football. We're 3 weeks away. Enroll now. Use the code 5, FIVE. Put down your $5. You get 50 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy. Luxurious. Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne.
Yay. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing rubber frauds.
Down to Biscayne.
Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Well, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. We are setting the scene for some off-season content. 20 years ago, well, not quite 20, but it's the 20th anniversary season, the Miami Heat became champions. They had not been champions in their history. Founded in 1988. Back in the old Miami Arena, which was basically a relic about 3 years after it was built. We appreciate the folks who keep the Miami Arena alive on their Instagram account. It brings back a lot of memories of me parking in the gravel lot next to the building after Heat and Knicks games and various other disasters. But that is where the Heat were founded in 1988. I was 15 at the time. I hate to say that. By the time I came back from grad school, and I will acknowledge I was a Knicks fan. Pat Riley was the coach of the Knicks. I had no anticipation at that time that I would be ultimately covering Pat Riley in Miami. And then came down to Miami, took a job with the Palm Beach Post, and suddenly I was in his second season with the Heat. Actually, first season, I covered a little bit as well. When he was the head coach, they would practice down at LaSalle, and there was this dream, right? This was on the Carnival ship that they were going to bring a championship to Miami, and they started to set the scene with the Glenn Rice for Alonzo Mourning trade, which Greg Sylvander cried about at the time. We always bring that back to you. And they put themselves in position to, to build a contender. But the contender never really got over the hump, largely because what happened 25 years ago, 2 days ago, as we're recording this, a move that was meant to essentially get them past their emotional, mental, and physical failings that they kept running into against the Knicks. They to change the course of their trajectory a little bit. Excuse me. Upgrade the roster, get rid of some of the bad feeling, and so they made a trade again 25 years ago. 2 days ago, 25 years and 2 days ago, of Jamal Mashburn, PJ Brown. Two mainstays, third and fourth players, basically from those late 90s teams with Zoe and Tim. They traded those players. They wanted to get Tracy McGrady or Grant Hill. It's a good thing they didn't get Grant Hill because he was not in his best physical condition at that time. Didn't get either. Pivoted to Eddie Jones. Picked up Anthony Mason in a trade along with Eddie Jones, and also got Brian Grant. And I'm proud to say this is the first big story I ever broke. I had that first, that Brian Grant was coming to Miami and that whole trade was happening. And so that's basically the core of a team that was going to essentially win a championship. That's what they thought. They had a lineup of Tim and Zoe, and Bruce Bowen was still there, and Mace and Brian Grant and Eddie Jones. They signed Eddie and Brian to 7-year, $86 million contracts. I can't remember what I ate yesterday, but I remember the size of those deals. It was a big deal. But then, unfortunately, as we were at FAU, I remember sitting with the great Barry Jackson. You have to say the great before his name. I was sitting with the great Barry Jackson. We're like, where is Zoe? And Zoe was not there at training camp because he had failed a physical. And that never materialized. He was out 69 games. He came back. They went 8-5. They got swept in the first round. The late Anthony Mason, God rest his soul, who had a great season, all-star season, he kind of quit in the playoffs. They got rolled, and then they essentially started a rebuild, which then blossomed with the drafting of Dwayne Wade in 2003, the trade for Shaquille O'Neal right after that. And that's kind of where we're going to start this series, because that led to the championship. And I will acknowledge this, Greg, as we go forward. At the end of the 2004-2005 season, and also to say this, our Mateo Mayorga in our network has been conducting a series of interviews. We're going to be running some of those interviews here on Five on the Floor. We're going to be doing our own interviews. I know he's already interviewed Tim Reynolds, Mike Wallace. George Sedano is going to join me next week. We're going to chronicle the 20th anniversary of the rise to that championship. Some of it will push back to the 21st year, obviously, but the 20th year. But I will acknowledge this, Greg, that when they lost in 2005 and Shaquille O'Neal was unhappy because he did not get the ball late in that last game against the Pistons at home. Dwayne was not healthy. He had missed game 6. They'd gotten rolled in game 6 up in Detroit. I was there, came back. And Stan kept going to Dwayne late in that game. It was not the same. And I remember sitting with Shaq at the Delano Hotel and him complaining about Stan for about 6 hours. I knew things weren't going to work out. But Pat made a trade, and I will always acknowledge this. I've never been so wrong about something, and I'm sure George is going to kill me on this. I hated the trade at the time. I remember where I wrote the column for the Sun Sentinel screaming headline, basically Pat's lost his mind, traded Eddie Jones, and essentially gave up on that team, but he got some guys who'd had some issues elsewhere with various things, in terms of the ball and possession time usage, and ended up with Jason Williams, Antoine Walker, James Posey, Gary Payton as a cheap free agent. I've never been so wrong. What did you think of the trade as we pivot back to start this series at the time?
It's interesting because I think actually the team that lost to the Pistons in 05, like they had a legit shot to win it all. And if Wade didn't hurt his ribs, I think they actually would have maybe got it done that year. So it was controversial in the respect that had everyone been okay and Wade been fully healthy, they may have not felt the need to make these changes. But this was a deal that the prize, I think, at the time, Antoine Walker was a free agent. And so they essentially got a free agent in a sign and trade, and also supplemented with Posey and with J. Will. It was a big shift. It's kind of like what Heat fans have asked to happen with the team that's currently there. And they're kind of finally getting to a place where you're seeing the roster turn over. But to me, thought that it was a team that could win the championship immediately. I wanted to see Wade healthy, but when you put the pieces together, and I remember hearing Dan Lebitard mention, like, I've seen teams win championships before with pieces that don't fit. Ethan, you were kind of right. Like, they had like Antoine Walker and Udonis Haslem, and like you didn't know how those two guys were going to be able to play next to each other in the front court. It's a different day for basketball. J. Will was a welcome addition at point guard. Damon Jones had a great season the year before hitting threes, but J. Will was just a better point guard overall. They got better talent and they looked like they were ready for a run. But I still say to this day, had Wade not hurt his ribs, that they would have likely got it done in 04-05 as well.
That team played better. The 04-05 team played better than the 05-06 team.
59 wins, yeah.
59 wins, and Shaq was better. That's the biggest thing. Shaq was an MVP candidate, finished number 2 to Steve Nash. He probably should have won it. And Dwayne had made the leap. Like, they kind of knew what they had after his rookie season, and the dunking on Jermaine O'Neal and everything else that happened there, and the big shot in the lane. They gave it to the rookie and he delivered. Tony Fiorentino's call. They knew what they had, but the explosion statistically in the second season, as Shaq still commanded an incredible amount of attention. And by the way, I was among those who, and I not great on my part either, that was kind of like, they're giving up both Karan and Lamar to get Shaq, who at the time there was the contract dispute. There were talk about how lazy he'd gotten and all that. His numbers had declined significantly, even though he had a big presence, obviously. So I wasn't a whole 100% sold on that either. So, and when they got Shaq, it was sort of indicated this is a 2-year plan. Like we don't have time to put the entire team together. They gave up Brian Grant, was a starter, even though he was diminishing at that time. But Lamar and Karan, when Karan got healthy, they logged heavy minutes for them. And they had to sort of plug these holes. Damon Jones had been, I think, with 7 teams to that point, and he was the starting point guard. Shaq and Shrek and Dunkey, the whole thing. And Damon was kind of comic relief, but he made shots. But he wasn't really a great dribbler. He was a bad defender. And Eddie was a hope trafficking thing at that point. Like Eddie was a very talented player, was best as a number 3. Kind of got pushed into being a number 1 for the Heat with a couple of down years because of Zoe's situation. And by then you're like, well, he's not really even a number 3 anymore that you can count on in big situations. And so, but I was partial to him personally, and I think I let that. I don't get caught up in that stuff anymore. But at the time, as a younger reporter, I think I used to do that. So I was like, okay, they're giving up Eddie. He gives them defensive versatility. He gets steals. He's a shot maker, but he wasn't a shot maker when it most mattered for them. And I don't think Shaq ever totally trusted him from back in the days in LA, and that had become an issue when they came over too. So they put this team together, but again, put it together on the fly, put it together with Udonis as essentially a first-time starter. He hadn't really been a starter the previous year. And you mentioned Damon and others. Keon Dooling in that first year, played a role. But now you're getting, okay, Gary Payton's not Gary Payton anymore, but he's still Gary Payton. Like there's a certain edge that he would play with. And Antoine was a tough fit. People do forget that. Like, it was like he really was a 4. They had to play him at the 3. They kept rotating between him and Posey as the starting 3. I thought Posey would fit right away. He did, just the type of player he was. He was a glue guy. But Jay Will was the most interesting one to me because Jay Will was white chocolate. Jay Will was out of control. Jay Will was a highlight reel. Jay Will could be difficult with coaches. Jay Will had all these different situations that made me fearful of him. And then he came to Miami and he became a pure bring the ball up the court, give it to Dwayne point guard, who made open shots. He made a tremendous transformation that year to the point that we would sometimes be like, "Where's Jay Will?" Like,
Yeah.
like
shoot, do something, dribble behind your back, do something. Yeah.
do something. Be more aggressive, attack more. And of course, the game against Detroit in the Eastern Conference Finals, which I'm sure we're going to talk about more as we go, the clincher, that's what he did. He was Jay Will, so he was able to do that in certain situations. And Antoine had games where he made shots. Posey, of course, came up big in a lot of situations, and then GP had the one shot that I think a lot of people remember. But I mean, as we go to the other side of this, I want to again set the scene. This is a set the scene type episode for stuff we're going to be doing. But I just want to ask you this, because this organization has a reputation for being a championship organization. But you can really make the argument that they were a snake-bitten organization prior to 06, in a year where not a lot went right. Like I said, Shaq missed a lot of time. Stan ended up leaving, shown the door. We're going to get into, sort of the specifics of that. I have a lot to say about that because I think I reported some stuff incorrectly at the time, which I always try to fill in the gaps afterwards. But they were 20 and 19 at one point, I believe. And when you say I was right about some things, that's always my argument to Sedano, who gives me a hard time about this, because I was kind of right about the fit issues, and then Dwayne just went nuts, and then everybody kind of fit around him, which is what we're going to talk about as we go forward. But on the other side, we do want to introduce a sponsor, but I just want to get into just briefly this idea of where they were and kind of what this championship meant as we set the table for a bunch of episodes that are to follow. I do want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Real Estate Shop. It's realestateshopfl.com, realestateshopfl.com. This is your place to go to buy or sell real estate. Amanda, Javier, they do a great job for you. It's a family business. They know what your family needs. They know the South Florida market, specifically Broward County, all over Broward County. They've got open houses going on every weekend. So check them out. It's realestateshopfl.com, the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. Let me ask you, what was your perception of the Heat as of the loss to Detroit in 2005? Because all we known was these like really devastating losses going back to the Knicks series from the late 90s.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that for a minute, I was at all those game 7s and game 5s that they lost at home against the Knicks. I also was at game 7 against the Pistons that you referenced earlier when they lost and Dwayne was injured. You started to think like, were you ever going to get one? Like the Shaq trade happened. You brought in Wade. You didn't get over the hump. You were in a situation where now you had built a contender basically twice, like 2, maybe 3, we'll really call them. Zoe got hurt or got sick in one of those, but they had basically gone through 3 build cycles and they didn't win a ring yet. And so you did start to get to a place where, as a Heat fan, because people like at this day and age, like it's like you get to the finals, it's not enough, right? But back then, like they had never closed the deal. And you started to wonder, like, is this going to be a situation where Riley goes his whole career down here and they don't get it done? That sounds crazy to say out loud these days, right? Because like the expectations have shifted so high, but there was so much heartbreak. Like you built these teams, you couldn't get over the Knicks. That usually would have gotten Riley fired and out the door long, just the optics of losing to the Knicks, who he faxed in his resignation to. Then they make all the trades and they don't get it done because Zoe gets sick. Then they go get Shaq and become like a worldwide team. Wade is on the scene. And so it was like a moment where when you saw the trade happen, and I do want to remind everybody that the Shaq trade happened, I think in August, maybe like August 1st or something, or late July. And then this trade happened, and you just mentioned it the other day on Off the Floor. August 1st is when this trade happened. So these are late in the offseason moves. It was a moment where you said, whoa, like they're taking a huge risk here in shuffling things around Shaq and Dwayne. But to your point, they had a finite window to get that done with Shaq. And I think they recognized that. And he was in a little worse shape every year as he came back from when he was acquired. So they took a huge risk. And I think it's actually for like the long-standing fans, when they saw the Jimmy build happen, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I'm trying to bring this back to current times also. We were waiting for like the Eddie Jones for Antoine Walker, J. Will, Posey trade during the Jimmy build. And so I think that this was when Heat fans, Ethan, started to get kind of conditioned to expect, when things didn't work out, that you were going to likely make wholesale changes.
Yeah, it's funny because as you were talking about it, I knew that's what people are going to hear, right? Why didn't they do this for Jimmy?
Yeah.
But the circumstances were a little different then. It was easier to make these kind of trades. This is many CBAs ago, and you could make things fit if you needed to. You know, one of the crazy things, you go back to the Brian Grant trade that I mentioned, going way back to 2000. Brian came down to Miami. He was so impressed. He's talked about this on our podcast at one point, that he was willing to take like whatever the mid-level exception was at the time, which was like $4 million. And then his agent, Mark Bartelstein, was like, no, we're going to get you in a sign and trade to get the big contract. Like, that's how impressed it was really that simple before. It's not now. You didn't have aprons. You didn't have all of these other circumstances, teams you can't deal with because they're over the apron, just many, many, many more complications that honestly, the more that we go forward, just seem like they're totally random. Like, I don't even know what some of it's funny. CJ McCollum was talking about the idea of not being able to put super teams together. And it's like, well, I can't think of the guy who did this. CJ McCollum helped negotiate this deal. So it just became a lot harder. And it became harder specifically after the big three, when teams wanted to legislate against the Heat, including the Cavs, who then ended up bringing LeBron back after all of that. I think the big point to make as we go forward in this series too is, we have given Pat Riley and the organization and this front office a certain amount of grace because they did get over the hump. If they don't get over the hump in 2006, then most likely, okay, even with Pat's reputation, we wouldn't have. And again, it's all butterfly effect. But like what happened in 2007, 2008, and the two kind of years where they sort of wasted Dwayne's primest of prime, 2008 through 2010, where he might have been BIW, as Pat said, best in the world. Like, I don't know that this group even gets to 2010, in which they end up getting LeBron, which then has spoiled a generation of Heat fans, irreversibly. So this title is the flashpoint. Like, it's not, and I will acknowledge also that you were enjoying it as a fan. So I want you to close with what your feeling was when they finally got over the hump. I was not. I was a reporter at the time, but I was kind of a reporter trying to hold on to my bad opinion. Like, I would not say I don't root anyway, okay? But especially then. I mean, now I kind of sort of stray the line a little bit. I'm a fanalist, whatever, and we have a fan-based network. But like at the time, I was an objective journalist who had staked his claim that this team was not going to get over the top. And I will say that somewhere deep inside of me, and George knows this, I was happy that they were struggling in 2005, 2006, because I was like, look at that. I was right. You brought in all these guys. They don't fit. A whole bunch of characters. Udonis has said it's like the most difficult group he's ever worked with in his life. That was pre-Hassan, though, so I don't know. But it was like, I was right. And then, like, I'm in Dallas for Game 6. And Dwayne misses the 2 free throws. People forget that. But Jason Terry misses a shot, whatever. They have the celebration. We're rushing the locker room. We get to the locker room. Antoine Walker is saying he's going to drink until training camp, which probably was true because he came to training camp overweight. Jay Will is spraying us with champagne, screaming, "I'm not an effing cancer. I'm not an effing cancer." And Zoe is answering, who I was the happiest for, by the way. Zoe is answering Rachel Nichols 2 questions in about 13 minutes, which might have been longer than that. You can find it somewhere. And I'll say I couldn't really enjoy it just because this is when you want to be right. So people in our network, okay, should listen to this. When you want to be right so bad, it kills the enjoyment of anything. Amen. So yeah, I had all these 15 strong cards. I couldn't find them after I got divorced. Thanks, Sean, sending me some, and I've lost some more. But I just couldn't enjoy it. I couldn't enjoy it. But I know that what we do now would not exist without it. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Before we start headed to this series, how did you experience 2006?
So I enjoyed it enough for both of us. Don't worry about that. I can tell you that it was, I can hear Mike Inglis's voice when he said, "The Miami Heat are champions of the basketball world." And like, just thinking that the Heat got to the mountaintop, like it just was, you never thought it was going to actually happen. It happened. When Zoe got to the podium, that's when we talk. It's so funny how the world comes full circle. Cause I was like a young teen who cried when Glenn Rice got traded. And then I shed a tear in 06 when Zoe started to talk at the podium, like, cause I had known what he went through and to get back. So that was like a real big moment. And so I'm just crying everywhere, right? I'm crying when guys get traded. I'm crying when the team wins the title. And I'll just close with this funny story about this. I lived in Orlando at the time in 2006, and watching the game, I was with my wife, and all of a sudden we get a knock at the door. There's about 7 minutes left in the game. Knock at the door. Doom, doom, doom. I answer the door. It's the Orlando Police Department. There had been a call to our apartment that we lived at. They thought that my wife and I were fighting, but we were not. We were watching the game and screaming at the TV. So the police said, "Can we step in and just hang out here and kind of just see how the situation's going?" And we were like into the game. So they came in. So I watched like the last 6 minutes of Game 6 with 2 police officers standing in my apartment just to like make sure that we were actually cheering for the game, which that is what we were doing. And then they left, and it was the happiest day ever. Like I just, it made all of the heartbreak against the Knicks when I was a season ticket holder and going through all those losses and those walks of shame out of the arena with all the Knicks fans flooding the exits. It made all that worth it to get that title. Also, it put Dwayne in a position where like I started to think, oh my gosh, like we could have like a Jordan like level player. And I know that Jordan
Right.
is like the apex, right? But Wade is among the greatest of all time now. And so it was
Mhm.
just a huge moment. And it for me, like it's the sweetest title, even including the big 3 years. For me, it holds a special place that none of them can touch because nobody thought it would happen. And it was, even
Right.
though the Shaq trade did make the Heat contenders, to your point, they were 50-32. They kind of
Mhm.
struggled through the regular season, and you didn't expect them to get it done, and they got it done. So there was a purity and an innocence in the fan base at that time because they had not gone through that in one, where like when we were winning with the big 3 era, it was like puff your chest out, pull your chain,
Mm.
flash it at the camera. Like it was a different vibe than 06, where you really thought like, gosh, we earned this one.
It's also pre-Twitter, and that
That's true.
matters. You were getting everything from TV, from the newspapers. Seems like prehistoric times now, but it just felt a lot more innocent, I think, than the big three. When the big three was puff your chest out, but it was also just relief when they won because,
That's
and
true.
they were never going to win enough for anybody. Like
That's a
that's the
great
thing. Like
point.
not for outsiders. This team, they won one. It was enough. It is a forgotten championship in a lot of ways historically, and
Yep.
that's one of the reasons why we want to do this series. So Mateo is going to be involved in this series, and others, also many who covered. We are trying to get through the offseason, but we also think this is significant, kind of sets the stage, and we'll talk at times about the current team and kind of where they stand in processes to get back to that ultimate level that they got to in 2006. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.